Hello everyone, my name is Melen Salo and my topic for today is about a holistic perspective on indigenous digital library in Taiwan. For introduction, there have been a number of publications in the past decades, and it is regarding to the infrastructure, the issues of digitalization, access, preservation, intellectual property rights, language usage, and fundamentals element to build a digital library. The three types of typologies of indigenous digital projects in Taiwan. Type subtype digitalization. Existing cultural heritage, created cultural. And for the heritage creative reuse, B1, educational and outreach, B2, game applications, B3, comics and animations, B4, thematic websites and online presence, and for B5, video and films, and for B6 is production for business. Core mechanism. For C1 is IPR and open access, C2 is for standards and union catalog, C3 is for digital preservation, and C4 is for digital archive systems. Technologies and main construction of indigenous digital project in Taiwan. There are 6 restrictions on the use of materials. The first one is to consider which type of intellectual properties shall be clearance item belong to copyright or else. For the step 2 is to check the registration and length of copyright protection for the clearance item to clarify the subjects of right. And for the number 3 is to check the outward use of clearance item. And for the step 4 is to find out any ongoing legal disputes or related lawsuits. And for the number 4 is to check whether there are any new products and use and plans to use the clearance item figure. And for the last is the digital archives right. The main initiators of above-mentioned projects include the university professors, museum curators, and historical and cultural workers. Models of indigenous community engagement. Model A is the project plays an active role while the indigenous community passively participates. Since the libraries, museum, and research organization in Taiwan have accumulated a lot of indigenous-related culture artifacts, many institutions hope to fully digitize their collection by means of current digital technology, sharing the important cultural assets with the general public and providing a more convenient channel for academia. For the Model B, the indigenous community plays an active role while the project is passive. Some indigenous community are aware that they have to act in their own right, making the digitalization project team accommodate their needs through providing related digital resources of activities. Model C. The indigenous community in the project plan participate in collaboration. The collaboration is the most common model in indigenous digital library projects of Taiwan, which includes two sub-models. The first is that the project group involves indigenous scholar, and the second sub-model, the principal investigator of the project maps out of the whole framework the characteristic of digital collection development. The digitalized archives include a variety of resources of all indigenous groups that are mainly first and second-hand data from collections in the museum at home. The study observed that a number of digitalization projects establishing digital libraries were based on conducting systematic survey. The metadata for digital collection. The design of metadata in these projects shows a variety of practices. Each project can design their own metadata format and adopt different standard of controlled vocabularies according to their needs. The project also adds some elements to watch the collection management system of museums. Access to the indigenous digital library. The indigenous related digital resources produced by the TELDAP call all be searched and browsed through the Taiwan Digital Archives portal. The Union Catalog, for instance, aggregates indigenous digital assets together. It allows users to browse and access. The Union Catalog, for instance, aggregates indigenous digital assets together. This model could be regarded as transformation from digital materials to a creative cultural product. For the conclusion, identifies five focus engagement, infrastructure, aggregation, activation, and transformation. Engagements summarize two types of main project creators and their disciplines, and three models for indigenous community participation during the digital project. Infrastructure provides a close look at the characteristics of digital collection development. Aggregation depicts the Union Catalog and Teams website. The focus of activation presents how the indigenous databases can be activated for the public. Transformation further shows how digital materials can be transformed into a creative cultural product. The main contribution of the study is to provide a regional depth exploration of Taiwan, indigenous digital library using a systematic approach that will help establish and link a more comprehensive global indigenous digital library. And for my second topic, it is all about indigenous digital oral history. Overview. The literature on the topic of oral history has become well developed in recent decades. However, there is no cohesive definition of what digital oral history means, what is encompasses of its meaning if the indigenous context in particular, if indigenous knowledge is owned by indigenous peoples themselves, then it is critical to understand how their knowledge is transmitted in the format of new technologies. Methodology. The term indigenous digital oral history includes a variety of overlapping concepts. Oral history, indigenous research, and digital projects to determine patterns and definition of various types of indigenous digital oral history. The concept of digital oral history includes a variety of knowledge retention processes. Technological advancement has made it possible for oral knowledge to preserve in very sophisticated yet accessible way that were not possible with oral history interview in the past. Oral history versus indigenous knowledge preservation. It is defined as the documenting of history or particular events in history through recorded interviews with people who have lived through the events. It is according to Ritchie 2003. Digitalized oral history collection. The most common evidence of digital oral history is the digitalization of analog oral history collection. Not all digitalized oral history collected are the same. The materials in the collection and others are simply digitalization projects consisting of opposing oral interviews online. Filmmaking in born digital oral interviews. It is preservation projects. Many indigenous filmmakers introduce their elders as a way to preserve their traditional knowledge. Some end products of oral takes on the form of edited film meant to be watched by the audience. Digital storytelling. It is a genre of grassroots filmmaking that puts emphasis on first-person narrative and emotional using a combination of visual, sounds, and stories to tell that narrative. And for the language preservation, digital oral history projects is a language preservation, colonization, globalization, as well migration of population are some of the causes of the language loss. Community and cultural mapping. It is a digital format as a new application of existing form of geographic presentation. Digital libraries of traditional medicine and plants. It is a depart slightly from the other types of oral history project mentioned above. It is focused to the use of medicine to the oral history of indigenous people. Case study of digitalized oral history collection. It is a web research that likely to result in a listing of repositories of digitalized analogs oral history project. In an indigenous context, these repertories present an incredible wealth of digitalized oral history about Native American individuals. Oral historians from Asia interviewed for this paper mainly considered digital oral history to refer to digitalized analog oral history projects such as those found in the university or government repositories. The overview focused to the literature on the topic of oral history has become well developed in recent decades. If indigenous knowledge is owned by indigenous people themselves, then it is critical to understand how their knowledge is transmitted in the format of new technologies. Filmmaking and born digital. Oral interviews in the context of community-based oral history projects. Filmmaking is both a powerful and relatively affordable way to create instantaneously accessible oral history projects. Digital storytelling. It is described as a particular method. Digital storytelling refers to a type of oral story in which participants of the project created a 3 to 5 minute short film that analyzed this image. Language Preservation Digital Oral History Project. It is a tribe or a nation often city language preservation as one of the reasons they are looking to start oral history. And for the community and cultural mapping, the identities of indigenous people are often tied to their land and to reflected in the significance of their oral history project. Due to this interrelatedness, oral history preservation that capture a link between the oral history. Digital libraries of traditional medicines and plant depart slightly from the culturally based oral history project, and this chapter has discussed at length because this knowledge is often oral transmitted. It also traditional medicine by pharmaceutical companies. Digital oral history and ethics. As with many academic or social projects, it is the technology to record or upload oral history has advanced quickly, and oral historians continue to explore question of responsibility. Ethical consideration differ depending on the type of digital oral history. For the conclusion, this chapter provides a general overview of digital oral history project involving about the indigenous people in North America and Asia. The different types of digital oral history, digitized oral history collection, filmmaking, inborn digital oral history interviews, digital storytelling, language preservation, and digital oral history projects, a form that molds a traditional indigenous community of the people. Digital technologies have also made language preservation more dynamic and interactive for language learning. Different types of digital oral history project come from the different ethical dilemmas and consideration. Digital Library of Traditional Medicine developed by the Indian government. They developed this library after a long history. In North America, indigenous identity has a legal meaning, whereas the concept is lightly contested in many parts of Asia. And that's it, my report for today's presentation. Thank you.